Dino Garner, welcome to Security Halt podcast. How's it going, brother?
Hey, thanks so much, Denny. Wonderful to be here. I appreciate your invitation.
Yeah, man. I love stumbling across great people on LinkedIn. I saw your profile. I'm not going to ruin it. I'll let you introduce yourself to the people, but you have you're quite the man.
I'm 10,000 years old. What do you expect? But well, I have no children like most of you all out there, so I've had a chance to do a lot of the fun things that I dreamed of as a child, and a lot of other things that I picked up along the way. So
Yeah, yeah. I just had my first one, but you're right, man. It's
yeah,
when you
congratulations.
thank you. Yeah, when you don't have kids, you don't have you can run the gamut and you can do just about everything. And I realized that as soon as they come into this world,
Yeah,
you're
you're a
that's
slave
over.
for yeah, yep, you're a slave for a long time. Yeah, that's an interesting point because when I was 9 years old, I grew up as a son of a fighter pilot, and we used to go to these fighter pilot parties, and they'd put us in a back bedroom. So I was snooping around everybody's drawers, and some woman caught me looking through the Italian nudie magazines. She says, "Dino, come over here." And so I did. She sat me on the bed. She says, "You got two choices in life. You can get married, have a lovely wife, children, the house, the pool, couple of cars, or you can have a grand life." So I have no children. Guess which I chose? Yeah, yeah,
Oh man,
yeah.
that
That was
stuck with
fantastic.
you. That stuck with you.
Oh yeah. Oh no. I had great mentors and people who gave me advice and very practical advice along the way because they saw that I was different from the other kids.
Yeah. In what ways were you different when you were a little one?
Well, I spoke several languages, and I got along with everybody because I
Yeah.
would walk up to people and just kind of yank them on the shoulder, on their pant leg, and say, "Hey, tell me your story." And so I was very curious, and
Yeah.
that bothered a lot of people because, well, also not only being curious, but also I hate to say it, finding fault in things or finding better ways of doing things,
Mm.
even as a child. So so I wasn't too popular with the people who wanted to maintain status quo.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Obviously, adults they hate it when a child points out something can be optimized or could run more efficiently if you have done just a little differently.
Oh yeah. When I was in the army, I heard that every day.
That's what I was going to next. 'Cause
Yeah. Yep. But that's why they just let me do what I wanted to do, and that's
yeah.
a whole different story. That's a whole different podcast, I think. But I had a great time doing it, and I helped a lot of people and changed a lot of lives, and ensured that people were safer, they were faster, they were better, they were smarter, they were more thinking, and so I hope that's what I will leave behind, is
Yeah.
just having helped a lot of people.
That's a great legacy to leave behind.
Hmm.
Oftentimes we try to focus more on like I want to be remembered a certain way. I want to change something and I want to
Yeah,
mold it. And
yeah, make a
honestly,
difference.
yeah.
Yeah, I, I just try to do the right thing all the time, and again, just help people, and it just turns out well for them and for me too, because I gain a lot of great energy, and it increases my personal power by doing that. Now, it's not I don't do it selfishly. I just do what I like doing, and I love assisting others or helping them. Big difference between assisting and helping. Helping is when you're drowning.
Yeah.
I've done that. But assisting other people on a day-to-day basis is something I really love doing because I feel we all have gifts in life, and we're obligated to share those gifts in one way or the other. Now, if you're a serial killer, there's an exception there because I'll
Please
come
don't share
after
your
you.
gift.
Yeah,
Please
don't
don't
share.
share your gift with the world.
But in general, everybody has a gift. Every person I've ever met in my life has shown me or shared with me some gift. And I think we're all, again, all obligated to assist others and help others and share these gifts. I
Yeah.
think mine are communicating well and writing and editing books and again, and just general communicating and getting people to share their stories. So that they're no longer afraid or even worried about potential embarrassment out there professionally or familially or personally. Yeah, so I try to break down those barriers for them.
Yeah. I think it's important to have somebody that can come in and help us identify what our strengths are, especially
Yeah.
like our veterans coming out, because not
Oh yeah.
everybody's aware of like what your true strengths are. Like, yeah, we
Hmm.
have guides, we have like, and it's some are behind paywalls ridiculously,
Yeah.
like Pearson strengths and all those. But it's important to have somebody that can come in in your sphere, in your world, and help you identify those external. It's not, not talking about your NCOR strengths, your true
Yeah. Yeah.
strengths.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. Someone who can see the gifts in you. And again,
Yeah,
we all have them. So all you got to do is just take a look, pay attention, ask a few questions, and sit back and just let them blossom.
yeah,
Let them share their story, and then it's not hard to assist another human being. It's really not. It doesn't take that much energy. For all you selfish people out there who don't want to help anyone, who don't want to take the time because you're self-absorbed. But it really doesn't take that much time. And when you do that, it comes back to you in spades.
Mhm.
And I think that if you're the selfish type, then hey, you will be richly rewarded. Yeah,
Yeah. Mentorship and coaching are something that I talk about a lot,
yeah,
especially for
oh yeah,
our veterans to focus on. You spent a good portion of your life working to ensure somebody else could reach their potential,
yes,
working to develop somebody. Uh, and I would beg to argue that on the outside, like that, you're still that person. You're
hmm,
still somebody that cares and wants to help develop somebody else. So understand that you don't have to be an expert in the field. You don't have to be um, vastly superior knowledge in one area or the other, but you just have to be willing to help somebody out in their current problems. That mentorship is vital, and it gives you just as
yeah,
much as the person receiving it.
mm,
It helps you grow as a person.
yeah.
Um, yeah,
Agreed, completely. Yeah, you don't have to be an expert in anything. It's because life is on the job training.
yeah.
So you are always moving. You're
OJT.
always, yeah, you're always improving. So just keep sharing what you learn along the way, and people will pick up on it. What works for them, they retain. What doesn't, they discard and move on.
Yeah. In this grand life that you were, you started focusing on as a young
Yeah.
child, where did life take you after your early years as a young kid in school? Where did you go?
Well, first, Dad was an Air Force fighter pilot, F4 driver in Vietnam. Mom was a designer. So when I was shortly after I was born, just days after, I was kidnapped by Grandma, my dad's mother. So I was on the lam with Graham. I started out life in a really curious fashion, and so I think I was repatriated after a couple of weeks. Maybe it had been 2 days. I don't remember.
What
I've heard
happened?
different stories. So my grandmother, the joke is, she was feeding me spam and whole chicken. She was a North Carolina woman, entrepreneur. All the Garners were, and still are. So repatriated, and then we were shipped off to Germany, where my father already was. He was at Hahn Air Base flying F-100s, and so I grew up there, and we lived on the economy with a
Mhm.
German family, and so my first language was German, and
Oh
then we
wow.
incorporated Spanish because my mother was Mexican, and then French and a few other languages. But growing up, learning, being industrious and learning industry as a child taught me
Wow.
how to just do stuff. Don't complain about a thing, just get it done. And then someone will pat you on the back at the end of the night and feed you your good night chocolate. So if you're having a tough time during the day, just suck it up. So I
Yeah.
learned, worked on the farm, and it was a working farm, working dairy farm. We killed killed pigs for bacon, butchered them. I witnessed all that. I was the chief wrangler of the roosters and the hens. So and the guy designed to go out and get the eggs, collect the eggs, and take them back. And I was the potato catcher. So I'd go out in the fields and I'd fill my bag with potatoes. So I got to learn at an early age what it's like to work, being around great family, people who supported you all the time, and who genuinely loved you and taught you things,
Yeah.
showed you how to do things. And so we were there for a few years. I spent 12 total years in Europe, and I'm very grateful for that because I was not raised in the American education system, which is
Mm.
entirely different from what we got in Europe,
Yeah.
and all the propaganda and stuff. So
Yes.
I just had I had such an or developed such an open mind as a child, and learning different cultures and being able to understand the language put me in touch with people. And this was post World War II by 15 years. That's when shortly after I was born. And so growing up post World War II in Europe, you get to be around a lot of people who are very grateful because it's still very fresh in your mind. I mean, think about 15 years ago from right
Yeah.
now. And everything is fresh in your mind. You can remember the horrors, the good parts, the great people, the unpleasant people. So it wasn't hard for people to have World War II still in mind. And I met a lot of veterans, not simply World War II, but World War One as well.
Yeah.
Uh, and to hear their stories, normally they wouldn't say anything. But as again, I'd walk up to people and say, "Hey, tell me your story." And people they would love it. And because I was a great listener, and I didn't tell them, but I was preparing myself to be a novelist in later life.
And how old were you at this point?
Yeah, I was starting out at 2 years old when I would walk to people, and my oppa would carry me around in a village,
Yeah.
and we ran into a very tall German World War One warrior, and he was missing an eye, and he had a hollow eye socket. And I said, Opa, let me reach in there and touch him. And I asked him, it was in German. I said, can I touch you? He said, yes. And I put my finger in his eye socket. and and so I learned at an early age that I was not afraid of monsters.
Yeah.
Not, with all due respect to that gentleman.
Yeah.
Had a nice conversation. He told me about his a battle or combat in World War One.
Yeah.
So the education I got in Europe growing up there the first 12 years was unparalleled. Wouldn't trade
Yeah.
it for anything. There were some really difficult times growing up because we were suffering from the Baader-Meinhof gang and other terrorist activities in Germany in the 1970s. There were
Mm.
issues like that. And of course, when I was living at Han, Nikita Khrushchev, Russia, was pointing all of his missiles at our base. So there was that stress that I never knew of or
Yeah.
felt, but my parents did. And I learned later on what it was like to live under the shadow of a Soviet missile strike or potential missile strike. So I had a grand
Yeah.
upbringing, and we came back to America, and we went to Montgomery, Alabama, when my father was going to the
No
Air
way.
War College.
Maxwell. Yeah.
Hmm.
Yeah. That's where
Hmm.
we're at right now. My wife's right
Yes.
now in that very same
Oh,
school.
yeah, that's right. You mentioned that. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Congratulations. Well, Montgomery. Well,
Yeah.
picture Montgomery in 1974. We integrated, I was in ninth grade, we integrated a previously all-black high school, Georgia Washington Junior High. And I quickly discovered that I was in ninth grade with a bunch of black kids who were 22 years old and had never seen a white person before. And this is America, Deep South, George
Deep South.
Wallace.
Lots of
So,
wounds, lots of
oh, yeah.
anger.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep. And I wouldn't even go in further. It was an eye-opening experience.
Yeah. I can't
And
even imagine
mhm,
Dino.
they love me because I'd regale them in about 4 different languages, and we had a calculus, not
You
calculus,
would
yeah,
not have
calculus.
survived in my school.
Oh, yeah. I had a grand old time. I had a grand old time.
Oh man.
But yeah, it was just a great upbringing. And so, fast forward, go through high school. I went to a public high school in Fort Washington, Maryland, and then went to some Cal College where I flunked out my first year of university. I got it all out of my system. Yeah, I'm not at all embarrassed to say because my 2 greatest mentors were both Nobel laureates, Julie Axelrod and Richard Feynman. And Julie Axelrod, when I was an undergraduate at American University, when I finally got my stuff together after flunking out and then going to a community college, Prince George's Community College in Maryland. And I love that. I would recommend to people who don't really care about going to a
Yeah.
Harvard or Stanford, because you go to a community college to learn and
Hmm.
to be taught and to experience things. It's a heck of a lot better than just getting thrust into a university of 50,000 kids as a freshman, and you're in a room full of 400 other kids. You don't learn a darn thing.
Yeah.
And but at my community college, I did well. So and then I got a full scholarship to American University in DC, and also took classes at Georgetown. And that's when I
Wow.
blossomed. I became the first scientist in history to culture shark cells. And back in the 1980s, there was a movement such that scientists felt that sharks didn't get cancer because they were completely cartilaginous.
Hmm.
That's not entirely true. They develop the cartilage calcifies over the years, and they develop a bone-like structure. But what's interesting in some of the experiments I did, it showed that cartilage has very special and unique properties, anti-tumor angiogenesis factor, which inhibits the growth of tumors.
Really?
Which, yeah, really, really great. So that is one of their reasons and mechanisms how they didn't develop cancer, certainly in like we did. So other people had tried to use or develop a cell culture. So instead of using live animals, and so I just worked on it for a couple of years, and I finally developed a cell culture. It took me 5 years to publish it because no one wanted to listen to a 21-year-old punk. But it's out there. Yeah.
Age discrimination, Dino. That's
Oh man.
real age discrimination.
You know, by that time, I had already gotten 2 other master's degrees and was finishing a PhD, so I didn't give a shit. I just thought, the same thing I'd known as a kid. There are a lot of dumb grown-ups out there.
Yeah.
They're prejudiced, they're insecure, and I was not going to be that way. So the paper finally got published, and someone sent it to me, and I said, "Why? What's this?" I'd forgotten all about it. Yeah. So
I wrote this.
yeah, I did
That's
that.
pretty
That's
good.
cool. Yeah, for scientists, blah blah blah. So I finished out my scientific career. I was at Scripps Institution of Oceanography, studying
Oh shit.
electroreception in sharks, and then went into the lab at University of Southern California and stuck electrodes in single brain cells, and had a great time. But both of my mentors, Feynman and Axelrod, said, "Dino, get out of science. You are a great technician," which means I was great at doing things in science, conducting science, practicing science, but you're going to kill a scientist because you hate scientists. There are passive aggressive types and difficult to get along with. And me, I'm not passive aggressive. I'm active aggressive, and
Yeah,
and
I'll
I
let you
speak
know.
my mind. I
Yeah.
talk about things. I've got an issue with you, and we're gonna have a little chat over here in the corner. And they didn't like that. So and Feynman and Axelrod picked up on that early on. Feynman when I was at USC, and they just said, "Hey, get out." In fact, Richard Feynman said, he played the bongos. Yeah, that was his thing. He'd go to strip
Yeah.
clubs and play bongos. And he said, "Dino, you need to take up the congas." And so I did for relief, stress relief, because you could beat the shit out of a conga. He
Yeah.
said you would have killed a bongo, but congas would be good about your style. So I did that for a few years. Anyway, age 35, I as part of a life plan. Yeah, let me back up. Ninth grade in Montgomery, Alabama. That's when I made out a life plan. I was going to become an airborne ranger. I was going to do marine biology, neurobiology, then airborne ranger number 3, and some kind of merc, some kind of mercenary, but someone who helped people. I didn't want to go out there and just spray and pray, and
Yeah.
not my thing. Interestingly, I had read the book Jaws, and I decided, and then saw the movie. I said, "All right, I want to be the marine biologist." But in the book, Matt Hooper, my idol, got eaten by the shark.
Yeah.
And so I was heartbroken. But then when the movie came along, he survived. And I said, "Holy shit, I want to be that guy." And then there was read The Dogs of War, of course, by Frederick Forsyth, and said, "Man, I want to do some of that stuff, but I don't want to hurt people. I want to kill the bad guys, but I'm gonna help people somehow, because in Africa, these guys are just hurting." And so I did that. And fast forward, I checked off all those boxes, did the marine biology and neurobiology. And then it was time to join the Army at age 35, get an airborne ranger contract. All my friends says, "What the fuck? Let me take your temperature, son.
Yeah.
Let's get a good blood workup on you." And I said, "I know what I'm doing. I've been dreaming about this for a long time." And
And what year did you enlist?
That was February 1994. No, actually, it was 93 during the Black Hawk Down crisis.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, and I was watching that on TV. God, I was getting my physical, and so I reported for duty in February of 1994. Made it through basic and advanced. Let me tell you about basic. Going into it, I ran a 22-minute 2 mile, and I was a little chunky. And so at the end, after graduating, even fast forward to airborne, well, no, actually, I haven't gotten airborne yet, advanced infantry training. Then I got down to a respectable, I think, 14-minute 2 mile,
Yeah.
which got pared down even more by the time I got through Ranger Indoctrination Program, RIP. So I'll go to airborne school, it's all shuffle. And I'm just thinking, God. And we have all these kids coming in from ROTC units, poking fun at everybody, looking down at all the enlisted guys. I put a stop to that.
Yeah.
And go to RIP, Ranger Indoctrination Program, start out with 150 of the toughest kids in the Army. We whittled down to 75, and I was number 2. And I said, I think maybe I can do this. I'm learning slowly. I'm not the best, not the fastest, not the smartest. I'm not the most thinking, but I could put all of those great characteristics and traits together at just the right time. Maybe 60% of this, 20% of that, 30% of that, but all come together 100% of whoop ass. And that's what really worked, because you don't have to be the best at anything there. You have to be proficient at the right time. And I discovered that. Of course, I was 35 years old. So, yeah. And so we get to first, and so I chose 1st Ranger Battalion. And wow, there's another culture shock.
Yeah.
Going in with a bunch of kids who were thinking, well, you're CIA, you're CID, FBI, just 3-letter agencies ad nauseum. And I just went ahead and said, I'm just going to do this. Not going to talk to a whole lot of people. I listened to everybody because those kids raised me as a pup at 35, and they were 18. So the 1st Ranger Battalion was just starting. Actually, they had been going through the expert infantryman badge competition, and they'd
Oh,
been
dang.
training for weeks, if not a couple of months on that.
Yeah.
And so I was told that I would not be able to do that, and I said, bullshit. So I went to my first sergeant, and I said, hey, listen, I can do this. I'll make you look good, I promise. Just blah blah blah. My team leader was right next to me, and he was just seething. And the first sergeant, Van Houten, says, let him. And I'm glad he did, because I had no training whatsoever. I just went through all those 50 stations, got a perfect score, the highest one. Then I represented all the Rangers and the enlisted Rangers at the award ceremony. And my EIB was pinned on by Colonel Ralph Puckett, later Medal of Honor recipient.
Yep.
And he had actually given me my certificate at RIP. He says, oh, you're back. You're still here. Because he knew how old I was back then. And
Yeah.
I said, yes, sir, I am. Thank you very much. Good to see you again. And so the Ranger career was, it was the oddest, because people let me do whatever I wanted to do. I wasn't sticking only with my squad. I hung out with the sniper guys, the mortars, the AT guys. I got to learn everything just because I asked, and because I did a lot for the company, and for the guys. I did their taxes. I wrote love letters to their moms and their girlfriends and their wives. I was always engaging, and
Yeah.
and just being, again, helping as much as I could.
Yep.
And so I learned a heck of a lot, and went to Ranger School too. Spent 5 months there. Went home without it, and I won't get into
Oh,
that.
man.
Yeah, but it was fun. Yeah, I've never been about certificates or diplomas or Ranger tabs, anything like that. Love to have gotten it, yeah, but it didn't happen. 5 months in Ranger School took 50 pounds off a 195-pound frame, and then I ballooned back up to like 220, and then had a whole host of problems after that. But I jumped right into doing Merc work, because I started a couple of international private military firms, and then I got to learn what I really learned as a Ranger, and what I got to discard, and made my own rules of engagement. I have hundreds. Um, Actually, I'm being silly. It's anything goes. When you go into combat, and I did over 220 missions, then I hunted poachers in Africa after that. When you go in with the notion, a philosophy, whatever it takes, and one ROE, anything goes, you're basically unstoppable unless
Yeah.
someone drops a hellfire on your head. You can do a lot that way. And it kind of goes back to the Army. Army had too many ROEs, too many this and that, and it was designed to forge a huge team. And of course, I learned at the same time, I'm not a team player.
Yeah.
And I acted as a team player, but I'm not really one. That's why I got to work out with so many other different sections within
Yeah.
the 1st Ranger Battalion.
And
And
how many years did you do a regiment?
3 years. Yeah, at the 1st Ranger Battalion.
Nice.
And it was glorious hanging out with. It was like going back to high school all over again.
Yeah.
And getting to do it right. And yeah, helping people, and I
Yeah.
mean helping them. But I remember then Lieutenant Colonel Ken Keene, later General, saying he had a favorite saying: "You see something that needs doing, do it." And so I did it all the time. It, with all due respect to my fellow Rangers, a lot of guys would be hanging out in bars and doing other silly stuff. I would always be doing something that helped somebody else, or that enhanced someone's life, or I'd be developing some innovative tool, say for the PVS-4 night sight for my M240G machine gun. It had that little single hole in it, but like about a 2 millimeter diameter hole, so you couldn't see things during the twilight hours.
Yeah.
So I grabbed one of those Canon. I tore apart a Canon lens and camera, and took off the little shutters, the leaf kind of shutters go like that.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I affixed that to the inside of the rubber part, the little cowling, and I could see at all hours of the day and night with that
Yeah.
little aperture.
You
And
know,
so
you're gonna be pissed. Somebody marketed that. Somebody has that, and they've been putting that out. Like that is an item now
yeah,
that gets sold.
yeah, good. Well, I tell you what, I did it in 1994. So, tell you what,
Yeah, I know exactly what you're talking about.
yeah,
Yeah.
and I don't, I also live by another adage: you can do almost anything you want in life as long as you don't care who gets the credit.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. So I would not go after those guys. I would say, good. I'm glad you took the work, because that is the way life should be. You shouldn't have to be capitalizing on everything that you do or give
Yeah.
to other people. Just share the thing.
Yeah.
And one of my good buddies, Matt Lum in Santa Barbara, California, said, Dino, your life is like a Forrest Gump movie. Because you just go along and do the silliest little things, like giving the idea for the smiley face, or,
Yeah. Yeah.
or something. I can't even recall the other ones, but the life has been that way. And when you help people that way, you may not hear from them again ever, and that's fine. You may not even get a thank you, but I tell you what, E equals MC squared. You take a tiny bit of mass, a great idea, you explode it, and the energy that comes out of it is untold, ungodly.
Yeah.
So you help other people in that way, and they just keep paying it forward. So I'm glad to have been a genesis of many of those energy transformations and explosions.
Yeah, it's beautiful, and it's not the first time, and it won't be the last. Ingenuity at the team or gun team level leads to a great insight. I mean, it's been. I mean, you want to see some ingenuity? Go to a regular infantry company and see what those guys are doing to adapt and mold their equipment to meet their needs.
Yes. Ironically, in a Ranger battalion, you weren't allowed to do that stuff. First sergeant would come by. I did about 10 other different things.
Yeah.
First sergeant would come. Yeah, he came by and he'd say, "Huh," and then he'd walk away. And then after a while, one of my team or squad leaders, he said, "Listen, Dino, you need to stop doing this." Because you're confusing the first sergeant. You're confusing people. This is how we do it in the Army. It's maintain status quo. We have enough time training Rangers to do what we want them to do. So don't pile on all this other innovative stuff that you have in mind. Just do your job. And
Yeah.
so fine. So they still let me do what I wanted to do. So it got my honorable discharge from the Army. I was broken, man. I was tired and worn out, and started 2 international private military firms and started escorting people out of hostile territories with someone else's money. That was not my
Yeah.
money. And so I had their resources. They contacted me. What's interesting is that people throughout my entire Army career were watching me, mostly civilians,
Yeah.
and I could feel them in the background. And once in a while, I'd get a message here, like, keep going, which is really cool. So I still don't know who the hidden hand was back then, but it enabled me to do some really interesting missions, taking people out of the hostile territories, taking them into safe havens, or hunting down persons of interest, which I love because I'm just a short, fat, bald, ugly dude, and nobody pays attention to me. You just get right up next to somebody and lights out, baby.
Yeah. If you can say, where's some places that you've worked in?
I wouldn't, except Africa. Yeah, I figure I got this far in life. But
Noted.
Yeah, the bad guys, they're all dead anyway, so I don't care.
Yeah. It's I gotta imagine that was not easy to set up. Like, what was that part of was that also on the list of like, hey, I want to do this wet work type of
Not
stuff?
quite.
Yeah.
Not quite. It was
very dark Dino chapter as a young kid.
Yeah, no, it was what you might glean from Dogs of War by Frederick Forsyth.
Okay.
So that's really just about being in Africa, trying to stage a coup and just killing bad guys.
Yeah.
And having a lot of civilian collateral damage too. And I wanted to avoid that. Nonetheless, I can tell you about Africa. I had the coolest job interview in the history of job interviews.
Let's do it, man.
Yeah, the first year, I had only gone there for a couple of months after a divorce. This is back in 2012. And I was going to stay just a couple of months, just blow a lot of money I just earned recently from some book sales. And I was just drinking beer and hanging out with a bunch of other crazy beer drinkers. And so that first year was just that. It was just coming down and DTMSing from a marriage. And I knew I needed some kind of outlet. I didn't know exactly what it was. So sitting in a bar one night in just outside Cape Town, a guy came up to me and said, "Hey, got a perfect job for you." Now, somebody who probably knew me from somewhere, I don't know. So he said, "You're going to go to," he gave me sort of like GPS coordinates. And so I went there. It was north of Johannesburg, near southern border of Botswana. And meet up with these 2 Zulu warriors. And my life took a turn right there. I knew I was in for a grand adventure meeting these guys. And one of them, I'll just call him Bongnali, "Mr. Dean, you go in this direction." And he's talking with his buddy for a while. He gets turned around. "Mr. Dean, you go in this direction." After about 10 minutes of that, I just said, F it. I bisected between the far right and the far left, shot an azimuth to the horizon, and I moved out smartly. And because he told me, you need to find a couple of guys, a couple of bad guys. And he said, "Oh, yeah, bring back their shoes." And so I set out. I didn't find anything. I was up like 6 total miles round trip. And I get back to them. And Bongnali says, he grabs me by the shoulder. He says, "Mr. Dean, you have passed the test because you did not get eaten by anything." And that was the beginning of hunting poachers. He did show me a duffel bag full of shoes and boots and flip-flops. He didn't tell me where they came from. I can only imagine that they came from the guys who didn't pass the test. Yeah, it's a tough job. And it's a fun job. It's also in the most beautiful country and continent, though I've not been in all of Africa. I'd say in the world, besides Antarctica, which I would love to go to someday. But yeah, Africa was magical. I learned a lot, and more about my resilience, because I was hurting and I was tired and I was broken. And on those missions, which turned out to be even more magical than I thought, I was followed around by a troop of hyenas. And when you talk to other people about that, talk about the most unusual behavior, because hyenas avoid humans.
Hmm.
Now, my electric field, and that's a whole different story, was measured when I was at San Diego, in San Diego. My electric field was about 4 to 5 times larger than a normal human's. So there's some interesting chemistry going on there. I know for a fact that other animals, especially predators, are very weary of me, and those hyenas just sort of glommed on. The female was left 9 o'clock, 10 meters off me, and everybody else was just surrounding me. In fact, there's that painting right up
Yep, you
there.
see it. Yeah, I
That's
was
where they
wondering
are.
why they had a painting of hyenas back there.
Yeah. So yeah, that was fascinating. They came out of nowhere on one of my first missions, and they would just fade away as I got closer back to my base camp. So it's been a grand life, and of course I haven't even talked about the writing and having fun with that. And
No, let's dive into that. We got a little bit of time left, and
okay,
being able to. I think that what I want our audience to take away from this is it's never too late. Your story,
yeah,
what you've highlighted, what you've shown us is that
yeah,
you can have multiple paths in your life. You can
yes,
choose to have different parts be dedicated to different aspects, and you don't have to
yeah.
settle for one thing.
That's right. I was in Africa at age 54. You know, all my friends are going again. What the? Those are the same guys who only 20 years earlier, when I joined the army at
Yeah,
35, said, "Yeah, are you serious?" I said, "You do, yeah, you made a great point. You don't. Life doesn't end at 40 or 50 or 60. It doesn't. There's no such thing as retirement for me.
yeah,
I wouldn't know retirement if I swam a stroke in it or stroked a putt over it.
yeah,
You know, retirement, I don't even know what it is. I'll just keep going until I kick."
yeah,
And I think that it permits me to share more of the gifts that I have.
absolutely.
And I get so much satisfaction from doing that. I love it. Yeah.
Yeah, it's important to. I know for a brief second, for a while, I told myself, well, I did all this, spent all this time in the military. When I transition,
Yep.
it'll be hard to do anything else. I just got to stick to what I used to do, and just stick to that. And you don't have to. You don't
No.
have to stick to that. I'm
Yeah.
telling you
Look
right
at you
now.
blossom. Look at you. You just blossomed into this. This is
Yeah.
cool.
Yeah, and
Good for
it
you.
takes work. Your next chapter will take work, but
Yeah.
it's whatever you want it to be. It doesn't have to be what that person
Hmm.
did, or certainly not what I do, or anybody
Yeah.
else around you. You can decide the moment you check out, the moment you ETS, you can start thinking about
Hmm.
becoming a scientist, becoming a lawyer, becoming a
Yeah.
doctor. And now more than ever, you need to know that education is accessible. You served, it's your benefits, so why
Yes.
not use them?
Yeah.
BRNE, GI Bill.
Yeah.
You can use all those benefits to go back to
Mm,
school and get that
mm,
degree, become a scientist, become a doctor.
exactly. But what do you
You can
tell
do it.
people, because they've been trained to be team players?
Yeah.
Now they get out there and be individuals and go for
Yes.
that. So how do you tell people like that? I've tried to tell them in the past, hey, I did it.
Yeah.
And it doesn't work.
Yeah,
Yeah,
my approach to it is just being able to do this, because if I can talk with Dino Garner for
mhm,
5 minutes and just let him tell his story and highlight his path, just while somebody's driving to that next interview,
yeah,
maybe they listen and they hear, "Holy shit, he was a scientist before. He went to Ranger Regiment at 35. Why am I complaining? I'm only 27."
yeah,
Yeah, I got plenty of life left in me. You know what?
yep,
Fuck this interview. Let me sign up for fucking school. I'm gonna go be a
yeah.
doctor.
Okay. It we When I say we're obligated to help others. I think one of the side effects and byproducts is inspiration. We
Yes.
inspire, and you'll never know that maybe you inspired somebody, and it's none of your business anyway.
Yeah.
You don't need thanks. You
Yep.
don't need to be, get that attaboy or the pat on the back for all the good you did. Big fucking deal. Just help somebody and walk away.
Yeah.
And if they come into your life, if they're meant to be in your life on some universal electricity, then let them. They'll become your friends, maybe lifelong friends.
Yeah.
I've met some people like that, and wow, I'm just so grateful.
Yeah. It's about just being willing to, like I said earlier, go once you're out, find your path, find your
Yeah.
why, find your purpose. And then when you know that, when you're rooted and anchored into your purpose, your next mission,
Hmm.
help somebody else do the same.
Yep.
And then watch that person do the same for the next and next. Look, we hope that somebody else is going to take up this mission, but the reality
Yeah.
is it's nobody's coming. The QRF is not coming. If
Yeah.
you want the veteran
Good
suicide
point.
epidemic to end, we have to help each other. We have
Yep.
to help inspire the next generation of great military veteran leaders. So that
Yes.
means helping each other out.
That's right. In different ways. Hey, can I talk about the two books?
Yes, please.
Or
Absolutely.
both of these were nominated for Pulitzer Prize, which is kind of,
That's
damn,
huge.
that's huge.
That's fucking
Both of
huge.
them. One of them is called Aero Masters, celebrating a century of the American fighter pilot. And of course, as I told you, I grew up in the atmosphere of the fighter pilots, hung
Mhm.
around them for decades. I used to fly in the back seat of high performance jets like the A4, A7, F4, F14, F15, F16, FA-18, even off aircraft carriers as a photographer.
Wow.
And so I got to do a lot. And the first book I did, I didn't like it all. With all due respect to the publisher, I just and the guys at Top Gun, they weren't too crazy about it either. In fact, I haven't heard from any of them in 30 something years. So I'm hoping to rekindle some wonderful friendships because my partner Liz Fetter and we created this beautiful trilogy called Aero Masters, again celebrating a century of the American fighter pilot. And the first one is just a stunner, 12 inches by 12 inches by 2 inches thick. It almost 10 pounds, but it's so stunning. All modesty aside, it's so beautiful. It is a museum quality piece, and people aren't quite sure what to think about when they get it. They said, we expected to be impressed by your work, yours and Liz's, but we weren't expecting to be overwhelmed and blown away by it. So, so that's
Why is
good
it
news.
so good?
Yeah, damn. And and so yeah, so we got Aero Masters going, and I just got blanket approval from the Secretary of the Air Force to go fly in fighters and frontline fighters again. F-15, F-15 Strike Eagle, F-16 Viper, and to shoot the similar and dissimilar aircraft like the F-22 and F-35. So here I am, 65 years old, going to go pull G's again. Hey, Denny, if you don't hear from me after a few months, call it a heart attack, and I'll still be the happiest guy in the world.
Oh yeah.
So I get to do that. So there's that book. And then there's a new one, the most important to me, most important book I've ever written is called Silent Scars, Bold Remedies. And it's cutting edge care and healing for PTSD. Actually, it's not PTSD. I got to get that out of my mind. I relabeled it PTSX, post traumatic stress injuries. X just denotes all types of
Yeah.
injuries, and TBI in U.S. military, our active duty military and veterans. So this book is really about, and it's 900 pages. It has literally everything, including experimental ideas and thoughts and research that you can think of regarding TTSX and traumatic brain injury. In fact, I'm working with a guy a colleague and friend of mine, Dr. Mark Gordon.
Oh yeah. We
Yeah.
know him and love him this show.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow. Amazing. And so as a scientist who studied neurochemistry, biochemistry at the cellular level, I know for a fact that as a psychologist or a psychiatrist would say, PTSD is just in your head. And sorry,
Nope.
it's at the molecular level, even deeper than that.
Absolutely. Body
Yes.
Keeps the Score talked about that. And,
Yep.
and that's
That's
the
right.
first book that I read
Mm-hmm.
that gave me that
Great book.
understanding. It
Yeah.
was the first book that unlocked. There are so many things that we deal with that we don't understand are linked to post-traumatic stress.
Mm-hmm.
From everything from, if you have canker sores, if you have any sort of issue with your immune system, like you can, and you grew up abused, if you grew up in a home where it was just nothing but violence and you have all these stomach issues, gastrointestinal
Oh yeah.
issues, endocrine issues,
Yeah.
these are things that are happening as a result of post-traumatic stress. It doesn't have to be combat. That's the thing.
Yeah.
This thousands of Americans are dealing with this as a result of
Mm.
all sorts of horrible things.
Yeah. Like
That
layoffs.
yes, absolutely.
Like a fucking layoff.
Yeah, all sorts of things. And
Yeah. Yeah. There's stress everywhere.
yeah,
And so that's why I want to just put a big plug for the molecular basis of post-traumatic stress injuries. Study those, put more money into it. Now we're fighting a psychology or the psychologist mafia and the
Mm.
psychiatrist mafia. They don't want that because they feel they'd be out of a job. But the fact is they
Yeah.
wouldn't be, because we combine all forces, everybody is going to be necessary.
Yep.
Yeah, so that book, so we're that book should be out before Memorial Day,
Oh,
and
nice.
that one will be on Amazon. Aero Masters is available from our website only.
Okay. If you pause right now, go to the episode description. There'll be a link for Aero Masters there. For the other book, as soon as it's available, Dino's gonna send that link over to me, and then I'll post that. I'll do a blog post about it because I like
appreciate it.
writing. Dino, it's been an absolute pleasure having you on. We could probably sit here for another 2 hours because we have to run it back for a part 2 because I want to really dive in
Oh, that'd be wonderful.
to your years of being a scientist when you go into studying anything that is that remarkable. And when you're in the field of study where you're studying cancer, you're studying like how we can improve upon something that is taking out so many Americans. Like that to me is a story that I'd like to hear. Especially how you clash with other people.
Yeah. Yep. Oh yeah. Well, if you believe in something and you know you're right, you know that you're accurate, then fight for it.
Yeah.
When people fight back, you know you're on the right track.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Dino, if folks want to get a hold of you and chat with you some more, where can they go?
Come on in. I don't drink beer or alcohol anymore, but we got plenty of tea and kombucha. Let's see. Dino. Okay. Email address.
Or like if you, for instance, LinkedIn or social media.
Well, yeah, LinkedIn. I'm on LinkedIn. The name Dino, D-I-N-O, Garner, G as in golf, A-R-N-E-R, Dino Garner. And that's about it, because I don't do social media. I don't like any of that. I love talking with you. This is great.
It's been a blast.
Yeah.
I'll put Dino's LinkedIn on the episode description. Go ahead and pause, go over there and send him an invite, connect with him, ask him to share some stories. Now for the real business. Now I kept it at the very end. I didn't put it in the very beginning. I need you to do me a favor. Head on over to Spotify or Apple Podcasts and give me a 5-star review. Leave a few words. Leave some encouragement, and remember to like, subscribe, and share. It helps me grow. It helps the algorithm. I truly appreciate it. Thank you guys for tuning in. I'm Deny Caballero, and this has been Dino Garner, and we shall see you all next time. Till then, take care.